Previously on Research, Rank, Repeat.
Remember how I said I was glad we did Pixar so I could have watched Cars 3?
Yeah.
I kind of feel that way about this, where it's like, I don't know if I ever would have seen this movie had we not...
Well,
maybe if I...
You also wouldn't have been able to find it anyway until 2016. Yeah. I gotta be honest, I didn't really like this film.
No.
A lot of people really like it. Like, it clearly scores well.
One of the pirates was like, halt, you're hostages. And this little girl says, don't worry, we're on the swim team, because they're all jumping into the water.
I was like, I want them to be together.
I wrote, 5 minutes in, he is gay for his friend.
Yeah.
And then I wrote, I swear these boys are in love with each other.
Yes.
They're just taking repressed feelings out on one another. He's like narrating in his head or whatever. And he said this whole thing was starting to feel like a bad soap opera. Mm-hmm. And like 5 minutes later, I was like, this is a bad soap opera.
It is kind of like a bad soap opera.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
So an integral part of the folklore is the raccoons' like scrotums. And they're shown and referred to throughout the film. The English dub refers to them as raccoon pouches.
Sure does, Hannah. Raccoon pouches.
Raccoon
I watched that
pouches.
English dub this time.
I did too. In the Japanese, they actually just say scrotum.
Or a ball sack, otherwise known as a ball sack.
Yes. Yeah, love that.
And then they're like, oh no, we all got turned on and had babies, and now we have no food because we couldn't keep it in our pants.
They went to Pound Town.
Keep it in our raccoon pouches.
Our pouches.
Started to see this film, and we've kind of talked about it. I genuinely was shocked when I heard Country Roads.
Yeah.
The John Denver classic, Take Me Home, Country Roads. I thought I was accidentally listening to the English version. And then I was like, oh, no, this is like a plot point of this film. And then I was like, I'm in. You give me John Denver and I'm in.
I said they're obsessed with Country Roads, and it's a move I respect. It's a good way to start a movie because I was immediately drawn in.
I think... potentially. Might be the best opening we've seen so far.
I think so far.
I think so.
To me, it's the most memorable.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those I'll remember.
Hannah's grabbing tissues. I'm going to say a secret about Hannah. And the secret is, I hope she feels better. Being sick is no fun. Wish her well.
I have an issue. Here's a tissue.
Here's a tissue.
Welcome. This is Research, Rank, Repeat. This is co-host Hannah.
And this is co-host Alyssa.
And we are jumping back into... Part 3.
Episode 3.
Episode 3.
Part 3 as well. Both are accurate.
Of Studio Ghibli.
Yep, Studio Ghibli, same thing, different pronunciation. And here we are, back again with more movies. We have covered 11 so far, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly. And so we're nearing halfway.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Almost there.
Almost there. It's funny, Hannah, when we started this, when we had planned to do this like a year ago, we had talked about how the studio was releasing a new film, and that's why we wanted to do it to time with the release of the new film. The new film has come out in Japan, specifically Japan. I don't know when it's going to come out in the US in terms of like an English subtitles or dub. No clue. Don't know if that's going to be impacted by the writer's strike due to that potentially needing English writers to translate. So we'll see. We'll either cover that in our initial run, depending on how long it takes us to get to the end, or maybe we have to wait a bit. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a little mini-sode.
Maybe we find it somewhere.
Wink, wink. Maybe a nice someone who speaks Japanese who happens to love writing subtitles happens to add them and then maybe upload it to a pirate ship of sorts.
Not like life size. Totally got that legally.
Agree with Fireflies. We're back with episode 3, and we're going to be covering some more films. and watching it on HBO Max, Max. Love that name change. And I believe I have the background for our next film.
Yeah, and most of our background, pretty much all of it, comes from most trusted source on the web, Wikipedia. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Our greatest friend. I also happen to find some information, and I am DB. Also
me
great
too.
as well. Okay, so our first film that we're going to be covering is called My Neighbors, the Yamadas. And that pronunciation was really hard for me to not want to go Yamadas, but it's Yamadas. I got it. The film is an hour and 44 minutes long. It is released in 1999 and is rated PG. The Japanese title of this film is, and I apologies, it's Hoho Ki Kyo Tonari no Yamada-kun. It's a comedy animated film. Apology to the people of Japan, anyone who speaks Japanese. Again, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. I really wish I could pronounce it the right way. Hope for the best. But it was written and directed by Isao Takahata. I almost said Tikahata. That's not right. Who has directed many of the films of the studio. Hannah, you know what I realized today? Or no, a couple days ago? He's dead.
Is he?
Yeah. He died in 2014.
Oh.
Or 2018, excuse me. He died in 2018. And we didn't cover that in our background. I don't know how I didn't.
Did we not know that? I thought we knew that.
Unless I did and I forgot. But anyway, one of the founders and media directors, he has passed. Sorry if we never talked about that. It is based on a Yonokama manga known as Nono-chan by Hisachi Ishii. Sorry, there was an I there. I thought it was a dash. Hisachi Ishii. Yonokama, Hannah, because I had to look up what that meant, it refers to a format that is in like a comic strip. So normally like mangas are like more like a book and have panels.
Right. You get like big boxes, sometimes like a whole page.
Whereas this is much more in a strip, kind of like what you imagine like Garfield comic strips, the Sunday paper, you know.
Like the newspaper
Right,
comics,
newspaper comics. Sorry, to clarify. Because I didn't know what Yonokama manga was. I was like, what does that mean? This film features a pretty different animation style than we've seen from the studio in the past, and that was due to the comic book aesthetic of that manga, so they wanted to replicate that. And it actually, because of that, it is the first completely digital film by the studio. Takahata wanted the animation to be watercolor overcell as opposed to how it's normally done, which is like hand-drawn. To do this, the animations were all done on computers. Now, Hannah, just to compare, another film that we've talked about that was also released in 1999 and was computer animated is Toy Story 3. So if you want to just compare 3D animation to 2D animation, this came out at the same time as Toy Story 2. Did I say Toy Story 3?
Yeah,
Sorry.
You said 3. I was like, that's too far, too.
Toy Story 2 came out in 1999. Yeah. Excuse me. That's like an extra 10 years from there. The film was composed by Akiko Yano, who is a very well-known Japanese pop and jazz musician. She carries a lot of influence. I'm not familiar with her, but she's described as being similar to the influence of like Kate Bush, someone like Kate Bush, who we have talked about with our Songs of Summer when Running Up That Hill became a Billboard Hot 100 again due to Stranger Things.
Yes.
This is the first film that she composed for the studio, and I think the only one. Because of the nature of the type of film it is, which is more comedy and like vignettes, the songs and the music in the film are much quicker, more like short piano themes, kind of more simplistic things, in contrast to some of the more large orchestral themes of a lot of other Studio Ghibli films, mainly by Joe Hisaishi, who is known for that orchestral, like, big, huge feel. Mm-hmm. This is also the only film of the studio to not be released by Toho or Toei. I don't know why. They didn't really specify why that was, but for some reason, I don't know if maybe it's the rights to the manga or something like that. No clue. But it was also released in the US with an English dub in December of 2000, done by The Mouse. So this film has mostly positive reviews. Currently has a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb. It received an Excellence Award for Animation at the 1999 Japan Media Arts Festival. And unfortunately, it did not do super well in the box office. It made 1.56 billion Japanese yen, which is the equivalent of about $11.91 million in the US. So unfortunately, like it was highly praised for its animation style, and the film itself, it didn't exactly do great with audiences in Japan. So I have a summary of the film. The Yamadas navigate their way through life's ups and downs with a sharp-tongued grandmother, a teenage son, and a small but loud daughter. This was provided by Max, the website where we have watched almost all of the films that we are covering.
Yes.
So this one, I ended up watching in English.
I did too.
Which was funny because looking at the voice cast was very interesting to me, Hannah. So the grandmother is the voice of Arnold's grandmother in Hey Arnold, and I clocked that immediately. I was like, that's Arnold's grandma. I was right there, and I'm like, excellent grandmother. I got the vibe. I immediately was like, I'm in on that character. The son is voiced by Junie from Spy Kids.
Yeah. Daryl
Hannon or something.
Yeah, married to Megan Trainor. Mom was Molly Shannon,
who we love.
That's the first voice I picked up.
And then the dad's Jim Belushi.
Yeah.
According to Jim Fame, John Belushi's brother. And then the daughter is one of the children from Cheaper by the Dozen and also from the Santa Claus.
Yes.
And it was weird where I'm like, I know everyone in the main cast I like have a frame of reference for. I know all these actors / actresses. I guess the main thing that I can say about it is I genuinely am so impressed of how good this film looks, for the fact that, one, it's the first fully computer animated film the studio had released, 1999. So I really appreciated the animation. I appreciated the art style. I thought it was especially very different from everything we've seen from the studio. And I also thought it was interesting the the vignette style. So we don't really have like one cohesive story. We're following this family, and we have like periods of time where we kind of focus on maybe one character or a group of the characters more than like the cohesive family. But I thought it was very fun. I thought it was a fun film. I liked it. I think the problem for me is that because it's so different from everything else, it is kind of hard for me to figure out how it compares to some of the other films. Mm-hmm. You know, in terms of how much I would like it or where I would rank it. I've kind of still been thinking about that as we've been going through other films, where I'm like, I don't really know where I want to put it because I don't know how to compare it to some of the other stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, when I first saw it, it gave me like some Charlie Brown vibes.
Yes.
Like animation style, and I thought it was interesting too. Like, I remember, I've never heard of this movie, I've never seen it. When it came on the screen, I was like, oh, this is different than anything we've seen. And yeah, it's just a lot of like these like simple moments amongst a family, and there were definitely some moments that like I thought were funny, and I think maybe my complaint or my issue is that it got a little like lengthy in like the middle towards the end, where I was kind of like, okay, I'm ready for it to be over, just because it's a lot of these short, not necessarily connected little stories. But I liked the transitions between them. I liked the like the little poems. They had like little poems at parts. Like, I thought that was cool. The animation looked really cool, even for now.
Yeah.
Like, I was impressed now, and I'm like, this came out, 20 whatever years ago. Right. So I thought it was entertaining. I agree with you. It's hard to compare it to something like Spirited Away, or like it's such a different film that it does make it hard to figure out where it's going to rank. And this is one of those movies where I kind of have a ranking in my head of all these movies, and this is a movie where I kind of would just like, I don't know, it could end up...
Yeah.
There's such a wide gap where it could end up.
Especially because once we hit a couple of the films after this one, I'll have watched everything that I've already seen. So I'll be going in blind. So right. I'm like, I have absolutely no idea where it's going to fall in the long run. Because I kind of haven't been doing like a light ranking. Like, I have like a rough estimate where I kind of like slot things into like groups. I almost wish this film was 20 minutes shorter.
Yeah, it was a little too long.
It's an hour and 44 minutes long, and
Yeah.
it definitely could have been about an hour 20, and I think maybe that would have been, because I agree, I actually watched this movie in 2 parts. I did half of it one day, half of it another, because of the vignette style. I was like, I think I could find a good natural break.
Right, to stop, yeah.
And there was, in the second part, I did find myself feeling a little, like, almost, not necessarily bored, but, like, a little restless. Like, I was like, okay, I'm ready for it, like, to reach the end point, I guess, is maybe the way I'll phrase
think
that.
Those types of, like, there's a reason why, like, Charlie Brown worked as, like, a shorter thing, is just because I think that kind of movie or that kind of style, like, I think it tends to do better in, like, a shorter format.
Yeah.
Like, they could have gotten away with, like, an hour 20 minutes or an hour 15 minutes. But yeah, I watched it all in one chunk, and I did pause it a couple times because I was doing laundry and stuff, which it's easy to pause because you just wait for the end of a scene, which is nice.
That aspect is nice, yeah.
Right, but towards the end, I was like, okay, like, I'm ready for it to be over. So I think that would be my one complaint, is I wish they would have shortened it just a little bit. But yeah, overall, it was, enjoyable. There was, like, almost, like, dry sarcasm throughout the whole film, which I appreciate and I enjoy. And a lot of just, like, of these moments that, like, I feel like can be relatable and, like, are realistic in ways. So yeah, it was interesting, and it was almost so simple at times that I was like, it works in that way.
Yeah.
It didn't need to do, like, these big scenes and all this stuff for it to work. Like, the animation and the simplicity of it was, like, enough to keep my attention.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we needed anything, like, spectacular and large with this film, which is interesting because this comes right after Princess Mononoke, which was a huge, grand epic,
And then Spirited Away is right after, and it's kind of like...
It's kind of like a little palate cleanser in between.
It's nice.
It's nice. I liked the dynamic of the family. I thought that the dynamic worked really well, and I liked that it was kind of dysfunctional, but they all like loved each other and they all got along. But yeah, it was nice. It was a nice film. I don't really have anything, like, necessarily negative to say about it. Mainly just I think maybe if it was slightly shorter, I think maybe I wouldn't have felt like I was ready for it to end.
Right.
Is maybe my one complaint. But I have no complaints with, like, the animation style. Great. I liked the difference of it, and I think that was a good choice for this type of film. I liked the simplicity. It was very clean, very crisp animation.
Yeah, I agree.
And I did notice in this film, I could kind of see the influence from Only Yesterday, which is the film that Takahata did with the woman who goes out to the family farm and, like, gets that kind of, like, family dynamic, like, small town. Not that this was in a small town, but I could kind of see that influence of, like, character dynamics.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have anything else. I'm ready to go into favorites.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. My favorite character, I went with Matsuko, who is the mom. Mm-hmm. I just said that she felt very, like, relatable, and there was a scene where she wanted, like, her mom to make her food, and the mom was like, oh, no, I'm gonna make a different meal, and then it, like, burned and all this stuff. And I just felt like her scenes were very relatable, and, like, I understood her frustration she was having and just, like, day-to-day life, so I picked her.
I really liked Matsuko as well. I went with Shige, who's the grandmother, and on their dynamic was my favorite. Watch it, like, the grandmother and the mom interacting together and the stuff like that, I thought was the most interesting dynamic for me. Genuinely, she's just like Arnold's grandma and Hey Arnold. Like, they give the same vibe. Like, she just, like, does not care. She has no filter. She'll say whatever she wants to say, but she cares about her family, clearly, and is supportive in the way that she is.
Yeah.
But I really liked all the scenes with her in it. I thought were interesting.
Yeah. Quote, I did have one I wrote down. It was right, like, at the beginning, and it was the son, and he was, like, talking. He's, like... talking about, like, if his parents had been different, and then he said, and if our family had been rich, my whole life would have been different. Like, very dryly, and, like, the family's just, like, stop talking. Yeah. Like, I just enjoyed the way it was delivered.
Yeah, the line that I liked is there's a part where Nonako, who's the daughter, they leave her at a mall. Like, they just walk out without her on a bench and, like, drive away. And they're trying to go back because they realize she's not in the car. And Takashi, the dad, was like, let us through. My daughter's about to be kidnapped. And just, like, the delivery of that line was really funny to me. And I, like, was like, oh, okay, this is funny.
Yeah, that was actually my favorite, like, scene, or, like, I guess favorite scene I thought about, like, favorite, like, segment.
Yeah.
And that was my favorite, just, like, the comedy when the mom's like, she's gonna be kidnapped, like, freaking out, and, like, they're like, you know, call the police, what are you supposed to tell them? A bunch of reasonable adults lost our daughter, and, like, and then the girl was just, like, fine. She was just, like, chilling out. Like, I just like the juxtaposition of that scene.
I did, too. I also, that was probably my favorite scene as well, when she, like, there was a lost kid, and then she's like, he's lost, I'm not lost, my family lost me, right. And then she just, like, leaves with, I think it was an aunt who was at the, happened to be at the mall, that she's like, why would she leave with a random person? She knows not to talk to strangers. But it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was family, and which it was. She did recognize who it was, but I thought that scene was done well. I really liked that.
Yeah, favorite Ghibli moment, I just wrote, like, the animation style in general. Yeah. I really liked the animation style. I thought it was creative compared to how they've done all their other movies, and I like when, like, a studio, like, takes a chance.
Yeah.
And does something different, so.
Yeah, my favorite Ghibli moment is there's, towards the end of the film, there's a part with these, like, motorcycle, like, I don't know, guys making disturbance in the neighborhood, and they change the animation style for that scene. Like, it becomes much more, like, realistic and, like, more, for lack of a better word, Oliver and Company, like, gritty 80s animation.
Yeah.
And it's, like, supposed to emulate this, like, you know, like, the dad's trying to put on this, like, tough guy persona to go, like, confront these motorcyclists. But I was, like, I really liked the shift in animation specifically just done for that one scene and not for any of the other scenes. So, yeah, that I thought was really well done. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I like that, too.
Yeah, this is cool.
That was cool.
But, yeah, mainly the animation. That was, like, my draw-in for that one.
Yes. Okay. Moving on.
It's time, Hannah.
It's time for Spirited Away.
It's time for the big guns.
Okay, so Spirited Away was released in 2001, rated PG, and had a runtime of 2 hours and 5 minutes. It grossed $395 million in the box office, had a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, an 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It was written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. And he wrote this screenplay based off his friend's 10-year-old daughter, his friend being the assistant producer on the film. John Lasseter, who is an American animator for
The Mouse. We should say a previous former animator for The Mouse, who then founded a different studio, and I believe was outed from that studio, potentially?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There were some allegations, I remember.
At the time he was with The Mouse, he convinced them to buy the North American distribution rights. He and Miyazaki were friends, and he saw the Japanese version and told the Mouse company that they should get some claim on it. Yeah. It might be smart to produce it for America.
Get their paws in there.
Yes. And he also served as the executive producer of the English dubbed version of that. Okay, so the film received universal acclaim, and it became the highest-grossing film in Japanese history, and it held that record for 19 years until Demon Slayer, the movie, came out in 2020.
Which is crazy. Held the record for that long.
Yeah, in Japan alone, it grossed the equivalent of $305 million US.
It's like it's the Japanese Titanic.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it.
So it's regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. It won an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature Film, and it's the first and to date only hand-drawn and non-English language animated film to win that award.
Yeah. It's
been on multiple lists for best films, animated, and just films in general. This idea came from summers Miyazaki spent at a mountain cabin with his friends and family and their children, who the movie is based after. Mm-hmm. He had noticed in pop culture that a lot of girls, which the main character's supposed to be 10 years old, so he noticed a lot of girls around that age were portrayed as, like, only interested in, like, crushes and romance and stuff like that, and when he observed his friends' kids, he did not see that was the case. And he wanted a young heroine that they could look up to, hence why he made the character he did. So the bathhouse idea was inspired by a bathhouse that was in his childhood town that he grew up in. He drew a lot of inspiration from that, and a lot of inspiration from European like architecture and ideas. So when production began, it was apparent to him that the movie would end up being over 3 hours long. He ended up cutting a lot of scenes to shorten it.
Okay, so the movie was 2 hours and 10 minutes.
2 hours and 5 minutes.
So they cut 50 minutes of film.
More, because it was supposed to be over 3 hours, so at least an hour.
I'm very curious about, like, what kind of things they cut, yeah.
I think they had, like, what they did is, when they started producing it, they realized that, so I think they got rid of some of their, like, scrapped it before they even did it.
Right, like, maybe had storyboards and stuff, but not full, okay.
Like, they hadn't actually made the whole thing.
Gotcha.
It was looking, the way it was going, it was going to be over 3 hours. So the score was done by Joe Hisaishi? Hisaishi. Who does a lot of his movies. The soundtrack itself received multiple awards. So there's a lot of thematical elements in this film. One being that the character of No Face is meant to represent certain positive and negative influences of people around you. The whole idea of his character is that as he is like consuming these characters, he's taking the traits of the people he consumes and turns into their personalities. And at the end, when he goes and lives with
Yubaba's sister,
Grandma.
Grandma.
Granny. When he goes and lives with Granny, it's supposed to be as his like chance to live without having any like influence from the outside world. There's also a lot of aspects of environmental issues, like a lot of Ghibli films, as well as Western consumerism. And a lot of American directors have cited this film as an influence on their movies. Steven Spielberg has said that it might be better than any mouse film he's seen before. Cited as certain mouse films were influenced by this. I'm not going to say their names, but certain films, like the adventure aspect and this other world aspects, have been influenced from Spirited Away. This film is widely seen as showing a film that was created in Japanese with elements of Japanese folklore that could resonate with audiences from all around the world. And it's been like cited as a movie that has been able to bring like a different culture into like American film and into stuff that people consume in America. Interesting, I read the stage adaptation of this movie was released in August of 2023, so just last month.
I did remember reading, I think when we did our background, I mentioned that there was like in production, like planned to be a stage production, but I did not know it.
Yeah, in Tokyo, but they did the first show in, I think, like London or somewhere in Europe. Okay, so summary. When Chihiro is whisked away into a breathtaking world full of spirits and demons, she must use all her wits in order to free herself and her parents. Why don't you go ahead and talk first, because I need a break.
Yeah, that's fine. We've kind of talked about this a bit as we've gone through this, but we had this movie on VHS. It was a black VHS book, I think is what they're called, VHS books. The cover is iconic. So we grew up with this film. We watched it a lot, in English specifically. But I probably have seen this film, 20 times. A lot. On my 18th birthday, I made my friends watch this movie, this and Little Rascals. Hooked it up to our tiny TV, then hooked it up to our flat screen TV. Watching it this time, a friend of mine has never seen a single film from the studio, ever. And I was like, well, you have to watch Spirited Away. And so I watched it in English for this time because I told him he could pick which one he wanted to watch, either Japanese or English. And he said English. And I said, cool, sounds good. I've seen it in both languages, though. It's just a great film. I mean, it's clear the fact that it's the highest grossing Japanese film of all time. The fact that so many directors and artists and the influence it's had on the world, not just Japan. And I know I talked about this in the background when I did it about the studio, that this was influential in allowing other countries, specifically like an Asian audience's countries' films, to be more acceptable to view and see in the United States, like more commonplace, taken more seriously, considering it won an Academy Award for Best Animated Picture. And is still the only film from another country to win that award. Hand-drawn, that is. It's just a great film. I mean, there are so many things I could say. The soundtrack is amazing. I at one point in time I was learning to play the opening song on the keyboard.
One Summer's Day,
because I love it so much. Sixth Station, also fantastic track. I listened to that. It was on my study playlist forever ago, and still is on a soundtrack playlist. I don't know. There's just so much good. I think that's the problem. There's just so much good. I love the characters. I love the designs. Everything about it is done in a way that is well done. It's not too over the top. It's captivating. I'm engaged the whole time, considering it's over 2 hours long. There's never a point where I'm bored or disinterested or want more. I feel like I get what I need, and I like the progression. I think the other thing I really like is the progression of characters. Like, I like the changes that, like, Chihiro faces during this film, and, like, the growth she has. I think is the most interesting part of that, is just to see that, especially having seen it so many times, to, like, watch that happen throughout the film.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think Chihiro starts off as, like, a pretty unlikable character. Not unlikable, but kind of just like a typical, like, kid who's kind of, you know, a little bit whiny, and
she's upset because she has to move away from all her friends and family. Not family, but friends.
Yeah, and she kind of evolves into this, like he said, like, he wanted to create, like, this heroine character, and she kind of evolves into that, and it's cool to see. Yeah, I've seen this movie a ton. This is definitely the Ghibli movie I've seen the most. And, yeah, it's just really, I think the story's really well done, and it doesn't feel like a 2-hour movie. I think it feels shorter. It moves really quick. It's pretty cohesive, and I think I like how it's not, like, rushed at all.
Yeah. It takes
right,
its time.
And I feel like the ending doesn't feel rushed. Some of the Ghibli movies in the past that are longer, I felt like they didn't save a lot of time for the end, and it just felt really rushed. Yeah, I mean, the characters are really well done. The animation's really well done. I haven't seen this movie in a bit. It's been a couple years, more than a couple probably, but it's interesting how much I remembered, how many scenes I could remember, how many characters. It's just, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's nice watching as an adult because I definitely noticed a lot more of, like, the environmentalism aspects, and I noticed a lot more of, like, the themes that they've discussed. Yeah, it's a really well done movie. I think it's maybe my favorite soundtrack of all the Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
It's just so good, and the music adds so much. I mean,
yeah.
There's not much to say besides that I don't really have much bad to say, if any.
But honestly, I don't know if I can come up with anything negative about this film that I think could be better. Maybe some bias because, again, this is a film we had and we watched a lot and I've seen many times. And it's a kind of like a comfort film, you know, in the same way that, like, The Parent Trap or, like, Princess Diaries would be. So I think it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, the bias. And it's also, you know, it is, like, an iconic, well-received and liked film. Did you say what it had on, like, Rotten Tomatoes and stuff?
It had, 96 on Rotten Tomatoes, of 8.6 on IMDb, and a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, critically, it's very highly acclaimed. There's not many critics who have said negative things about it. And you can tell, I mean, with how many, like, American directors, like, if Steven Spielberg says your film is good, it's good.
It's better than any of the Mouse films. That's saying something. That is a
I think
statement.
It's one of those films that, besides just being a good movie, I think it did a lot for Japan and for their culture and being able to bring movies. And, I mean, Japanese stuff is huge in America now. Like, movies, TV shows, anime, like, all of that. Like, you go to bookstores and you'll see lines of anime and manga, and there's so many shows now that are on Netflix that I know so many people who watch anime. And so I think that definitely has to be one of those things you point to as it helped, like, catapult that into America. Which sometimes even more than the film itself, that's, like, the important thing, is that it can transcend, like, cultures and languages and stuff like that, especially winning an Academy Award. Like, I would say there's not many films that have won an Academy Award that weren't pretty good films. Like, you know.
Yeah, had merit.
It might not be your favorite style, and it might not be your favorite thing, but, like, you have to acknowledge the fact that if a film wins an Academy Award, it's generally pretty well liked and pretty well done.
Right. There has to be some critically acclaimed element to it, or some elements that are work or are well done or well received. It's hard because I, like, going into this, prior to seeing all these films back to back to back, I probably would have said this is my favorite Studio Ghibli film. I'm currently not sure.
Yeah.
It certainly holds up the same way that I remember it holding up. A lot of things work. We'll see when I get to the end, because I definitely have a couple that I've got in a pocket at the top, this being one of them. But it's possible it might not be number one. But it's going to be up there, for sure. It's going to be up in that top area.
Oh, for sure. And I knew that.
Like, hands down. Yeah, and I knew that as well.
I knew that going in. But there's definitely some films I've watched I haven't seen that have impressed me a lot, too. So
yes. I have definitely been impressed.
I think I'm ready for favorites if you are.
I don't think there's really anything else more to say. I gave, just for clarification, I have been adding these films to Letterboxd and trying to give them the ratings, at least new ones that I've seen, but I had already given this 5 stars on Letterboxd.
Yes.
It's one of my, I think I only have 6 films that have 5 stars currently, and this is one of them.
You ready for favorites?
Yeah, I'm ready. So my favorite character is Chihiro, or Sen, what her name becomes when she joins the bathhouse. I think she's an incredibly captivating protagonist, especially for being a child. I really following her journey. You know, she loses her parents. She's in an unfamiliar world, a spirit world, where she is trying to get by and find her bravery and her voice, and in this newfound bravery, be able to stand up for what's right and help people in ways that she wouldn't have been able to previously, or wouldn't have tried to previously. I just think she's a really well done character. I always loved her design as well, clothing design, just the actual character design, and the relationship she has with characters, I think is really well done. So I appreciate her as a character.
Yeah, I'm just going to say same, and for all the same reasons.
Yeah.
Because I don't really need to say more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote a line more for its humor aspect, I think. Chihiro at the beginning of the film, they're driving in the car, and she said, "I finally get a bouquet, and it's a goodbye present. That's depressing."
Yeah.
I just like the way she delivered it. She's in the beginning, she's laying in the car, and she's just all depressed and very dry humor, and I just like the way it was delivered.
Right. And I think it's really interesting, Hannah, because we switched schools right around this time. When they built our high school that we ended up going to, we had to switch elementary schools. And you had just only gone to kindergarten.
Yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal for me.
And so you were only doing half days at the time. First grade, I was the only person in my first grade class who had to transfer to the new school. So I didn't know anyone. And I was really upset. I remember telling my mom being yeah, you were really upset, having to go to a new school and have a new teacher. And that was in 2001 is when that happened. So when this film came out. So I definitely could relate to that experience of having to not necessarily move to a new house and a new city, but having to change an aspect of your life and lose your friends and have to make new friends and stuff. So that definitely is an experience. And I would have been, 8. I think I was 8 years old, so a similar age as well. So I think maybe that probably resonated with me a lot at that age as well. But my line, let's see. Once you've met someone, you never really forget them. It just takes a while for your memories to return. And I believe that's Granny says that
at the end.
When Chihiro goes to her house to return a seal that was stolen from her. And I thought that line is really well said, that you certainly can have people that come and go in your lives, and although you might not remember all of it, things will come back. The things that are important that you need to know will come back. So. Yeah.
I look like death.
I know.
Just looked at my face.
It's
okay. I look like I'm crying. I'm so emotional about the movie.
I know. You're just so emotional. Do you want to go for?
Yeah, favorite scene. I specifically picked the scene because I remember it so much from when I was a kid, and it's when she first goes to the boiler room, and all the soot men, women are carrying the little pebbles and rocks, and I just remember that scene so much, and I always liked the little characters, and they remind me of, what is it? Oh my god, what's the movie? My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, My Neighbor Totoro, the Dust Bunnies.
The Dust Bunnies
Yeah.
kind of thing. It reminds me of that. So I just have always really liked that scene.
Yeah. I kind of did two scenes too. I picked one that I always liked as a kid, which is like right when the town goes dark and all the spirits start appearing and like the town comes to life and then the bathhouse comes to life. Like that I really liked with the music and like everything with that I really liked as a kid. But as an adult, the scene that I really liked was when the stink spirit comes and then are able to basically, it turns out it's like a river spirit that has been like polluted, so there's like a bike stuck and like a bunch of trash, but like once they release the trash and the water spirit is like free, there's this like very serene moment where it's just like really no noise. It's just like her and the water spirit and like they have like a moment, and I really liked that scene as an adult. I thought that was really well done, that I probably wouldn't have resonated with as a child much.
Yeah. Favorite Ghibli moment I have to go with, because it's one of my favorite instrumental songs of all time, not just for Ghibli, the opening scene with One Summer's Day playing, and I just really like the opening scene too, but I think that moment sets like the tone for the movie. Yeah. And it just works really well.
I also picked two for this one as well. That's one of them because I love that song, One Summer's Day, and that opening, and just like the simplicity, and like you have the understanding immediately about like what the journey is going to be. And I love that song, the simplicity of the piano and like the way it builds.
Yeah.
But again, this is me as an adult now. I love the setup of, it's called the Sixth Station. It's when she goes on the train, and it's just the train moving through water. It's the song playing. Again, it's just simplistic. It's shots of going through countryside, spirits getting off the train. It's just, there's really nothing specifically about it. It's just incredibly simplistic, but the music and the animation together and the visuals are just so well done. So yeah, I double dipped again.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies that, I forgot what movie it was from Mouse that we said it was so hard to pick, like, favorites. It's one of those movies where it's so hard to pick favorites, and that's, like, never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times when I have to, like, really search to find one.
Right.
Or can't even find one. But yeah, it was nice to see.
Yeah, just great film. There's so many things we could say about it, but we could also end up talking for like an hour. So
right.
We'll just keep it simple. It's a great film, holds up. If you haven't seen anything of the studio, I would recommend this as your first one.
Yeah,
because
it's a good intro.
The ease to entry is pretty... It's not hard to watch it and not like understand what's going on. Because I think some of these maybe might not appeal to certain people. Not to say that, you know, if you don't like it, that there's something wrong with you. But like some of the films, I think the barrier to entry is a bit harder for some of them.
I would agree.
Princess Mononoke, I think, is one of those films that like may be harder for some people to get into, the like having not have any influence. Like if you've never seen any Japanese animated films or like are familiar with any of like that culture and like that type of style, then that film might not be super impactful on you, or like you might not like it very much.
I agree. I think it's I remember like as a kid liking it too, so I think it's good for like kids too. Some of the Ghibli films are a little like
scary almost.
Yeah, like Mononoke, I was like, ooh, some of those scenes are like rough for a kid.
It's PG-13.
Right, so I feel like this is one of those films that I don't remember being like scared really as a kid.
I don't remember either.
But yeah, I would also recommend it, and if anyone wants a longer discussion, maybe we'll do a bonus episode of just Spirited Away. You never know.
Yeah, I could talk about this film forever. So we might potentially, if there's any desire for it, we might release a little bonus stuff for maybe a few specific things. Yeah, so let's move on to our next film. Okay, so our next film that we're going to be covering is The Cat Returns, which was released in 2002. And it is an hour and 15 minutes and rated G. The background of this film is very interesting for me to read about on our most trusted source, Wikipedia. So essentially, this film is a spin-off of, or a sort of a sequel to the film The Whisper of the Heart, which came out about 8 years before that, in 1995, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, 1995. So it came out 7 years after that point. And actually, the reason it happened is because a Japanese theme park commissioned Studio Ghibli to make a short about cats. They were like, hey, we'd love for you to make some sort of a video about cats for our theme park. Miyazaki was like, cool, we can do that. And that was in 1999. So 3 years before the film would eventually come out. It was supposed to be 20 minutes. So Miyazaki was like, here are the things that I want. I want the Baron from Whisper of the Heart, which was the statue that the main character was writing her novel about, was the Baron. Muta, who is the cat in that film as well. And then he also wanted some form of an antique shop to be featured in the film. And so he actually commissioned the original writer of the manga of The Whisper of the Heart that the movie is based off of, who is Aoi Hiragi. I'm not sure the name. I'm sorry again. I butchered it. Hiragi, basically, who wrote the original manga, was commissioned to write a new source for this short. What happened is, Hannah, is that the theme park at a certain point canceled the project, and they were like, just kidding. We don't need it anymore. But what had happened is that they already had the animation and had added to it, so they started using it to test future directors. So they were like, hey, this is a project we will, because, they were planning on having successors to the studio. Unfortunately, one of the people they wanted to be the successor, who had originally directed Whisper of the Heart, had died at this point. So they used it kind of as like a testing project. And at this point, it was already about 45 minutes long. This animator by the name of Hiroyuki Morita had taken over the project. And he had done about 9 months worth of storyboarding for the project. And Miyazaki liked it so much they decided to produce it as a feature film. So essentially he was like, you've done all this work, we like the way this looks, we already have 45 minutes of animation, just make it into a full-length feature film. Hiroyuki Morita was the director of the film, and this was the first and only film with the studio. And the music was done by Yuji Nomi, who I believe had done the music for Whisper of the Heart as well. It was released through Toho, and it was released through The Mouse in 2005 with an English dub. And it was the highest grossing domestic film in 2002 of Japan, and the 7th overall grossing film in Japan that was non-domestic. And it's the 86th highest grossing film in Japan of all time, garnering 6.46 billion yen, which is the equivalent of $65 million in the box office. So it has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, 71% out of 100 on Metacritic, a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and it has a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd in terms of rating. And so far, this is the first and only film that is a spin-off or sequel feature film from the studio, which is very different from a lampshade company that we covered, considering they have had many, many sequels to their films and prequels. We got it all.
All the coals.
But anyway, so I have a summary from Max. Haru's average life is turned upside down after she rescues a cat who turns out to be a prince.
Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, short and
That's
sweet.
the summary. Short and sweet. That's it.
I will say, Carl and Cash were obsessed with this film because they heard all the meowing. They were very into it.
Great.
Unfortunately, I was not. I'm gonna be honest. Okay,
I might have a controversial take. I feel like this film was made for the furries.
Yeah.
Because this main character has a crush on a cat, the Baron. She even says it. She said, I have a crush on you.
And they're trying to marry her to a cat.
Yeah. I liked it. However, it was fine. I didn't hate it. I thought there were certain things that I thought worked. The Baron reminds me a lot of Professor Layton or the Dread Pirate Roberts from Princess Bride. So I liked some of the characteristics of the characters.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear about your thoughts on it.
I had a issue with all, the fat shaming. And, I know the time frame. I know that was a thing that happened. But it just kept going, and it wasn't funny. Did you listen to it in English, or did you do Japanese?
I did it in Japanese.
Okay. Because I did English, and it took me about halfway through to figure out it was Anne Hathaway.
I was looking at the English cast, because
Yeah.
usually, even if I do Japanese, I like to look, and I'm like, what is this cast?
Kristen
Like, that's a lot
Bell
of
was
people.
in it.
And it's funny, because Carrie Ells was in the movie,
Yeah.
who is in The Princess Bride. So that was funny to me.
I don't know. I think my problem with the movie is that I didn't start enjoying it until the last 15, 20 minutes, the final scene.
Yeah.
When they get into, like, the maze part. That's when I started to enjoy it. It just was very, like, I feel like a lot of the side characters weren't good.
Or they weren't developed enough.
Yeah, they weren't developed. They were very one note. They had, like, one thing about them, and that's all they focused on. Like, the Kane and, like, some of the side characters. Like, they just had one thing. The plot didn't really work. It felt really slow for a movie that was only, like, an hour and 15 minutes. I don't know. I just think that it wasn't that interesting to me. And, I wrote, like, 4 times, I really don't like this movie. Oh, you know what else? I hated the main character.
You didn't like I liked the main character.
She's a bitch to all the cats.
Okay,
If you're a
but you know
bitch
what?
to the
Okay.
cats, you don't get to... I'm not gonna like you.
She saved a cat.
I don't give a shit. She was like...
She saved a prince, Hannah.
We're talking about Haru. She basically was like... I saved all these cats, but then she was like, get away from me, you fat cat. I hate you. And, like, all this stuff, and she was a bitch, and I hated her. I've never hated a main character...
Really?
In Ghibli as much as I've hated her.
I didn't hate her.
You know what's weird?
You liked the lead of Pompoko more than you liked her?
No,
Okay.
that's not true. I just didn't like her.
Okay, that's fair. I did not have that perception, but...
Maybe it was... I want to say maybe because I listen in English, but then that means I don't like Anne Hathaway, which just simply isn't true.
Yeah, that's
I don't
fair.
know. She just was very mean to cats, and it made me sad.
Yeah, that's fair. But, I mean, to be fair, they were acting as if she should like these things, and she clearly didn't because she was a human and not a cat.
Yeah,
so I
but
can
she
get
was
it,
mean to
you
the
know?
sidekick, too, the little guy who was trying to help her.
Yeah. Well, he did also get stuck in a bowl of Jell-O. He ate himself into a bowl of Jell-O, so...
Sometimes we get hungry. It happens to
Yeah.
the best of us. Regardless, I didn't like her, and I didn't like the movie until the last 20 minutes.
That's fair. I think some elements work. Like, clearly the animation looks nice. Like, it's always gonna look nice. So there was a weird moment, though, where there's some shaky cam.
Yeah.
When the Baron was falling out of the sky, it was, like, full shaky cam, and I'm like, what is this, Fast and
I
the
didn't know
Furious?
if that was, like, a choice. Like, it was a weird choice.
And this was 2002, and I'm like, Fast and the Furious had come out.
Maybe they
you
were
know?
inspired. Tokyo
You know,
Drift.
like Tokyo Drift, like the shaky cam, like I guess that kind of became a thing around that time. But I was like, that's kind of weird. Like I don't think they had done that type of style before that. I really loved, and I will talk about this being probably my favorite scene, not Ghibli favorite scene, just because of how ridiculous it was when the king shows up at her house and has the tuxedo cats or the bodyguard cats, and they're just like hitting people, throwing the street cats over the wall. Like I was just like, what is this? Like, what am I watching? It was so ridiculous, but I thought it was great. Just the bodyguards themselves. I thought the plot itself. She saves this this cat's life, ends up being a prince. The king's like, yeah, you're gonna marry my son. And she's like, what? And then it's like, he's like, oh, I show up and I'm in love with this other cat. And I was just like, the plot of that like aspect, I was like, all right, that's not really, I've seen that many times. I'm betrothed to you, but I'm in love with someone else, you know?
Right.
Like, so that part, I was like, all right, I'm not really that interested in that plot line. Also, that one cat with the white cat with the pink bow, really, I was like, I feel like this is Marie from the Aristocats. I was like, there's definitely got to be some influence from that film.
It just didn't feel like a Ghibli movie.
Yeah, it felt like Ocean Waves in a way.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's because this originally started out as it's supposed to be a
Maybe.
short, and then it was added onto,
It could be.
and was, you know, and they did bring back the original writer of the manga to write like the storyboard for this, but it's almost like the original Whisper of the Heart. The thing that I really liked about it is that it was based in reality, but then you have these fantasy moments that are just part of the film and not the whole film. And I don't know if it worked as a whole film. And it's also weird because this movie is an hour and 15 minutes long. Like, it's maybe the shortest film of the studio, but it also felt
very long.
very long.
It felt longer than Spirited Away.
Yeah.
You asked why the director didn't come back?
Yeah.
I'm just saying because they made this movie.
They did also turn her into a cat girl.
Yeah, and the end of the
know?
movie, was it implying that she didn't like the guy anymore because she was in love with the cat?
Yeah, and she also cut her hair, like, had changed her appearance and seemed very different. Yeah, I kind of feel like it was implying that she's in love with the Baron there, and that her crush is beneath her.
She was no longer
Now
interested
something-
in the Ash Pokemon motherfucking looking dude because she was now in love with a cat.
Yeah. I think so. You know, I think it's interesting because I did like the main character. I liked the, you know, she seemed to have, like, a good relationship with her friend. One friend that she
Kristen
had.
Bell.
Was it Kristen Bell played the friend?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I heard that voice and I was like, that sounds familiar.
You know, like, she saved a cat in the beginning, but, you know, she sleeps in and was late to school, and I'm like, I can relate to that.
I mean, I could relate to her.
Yeah.
Like, not... Like, her mom's like, why do you bother setting the alarm clock? I was like, yeah, fair.
Yeah, I get that. I thought she was interesting enough and had enough personality to, like, be a main lead, I guess. I guess my issues were more with the side characters. Like, there's that crow, Raven, that just kind of exists briefly but really doesn't get a story, and the Baron is also feels very, like, underdeveloped at times. I hated the king.
Yeah.
Did Tim Curry play the king?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say I saw Tim Curry was in the cast, and I'm like, I feel like he would be the roast king. He's like, marry me instead. She was like, ew, no.
When they, like, rolled in and he's like, oh, I like what I see, and I was like, ew.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, blah, blah.
I don't know. I just didn't like it.
I don't think it's the worst film in the studio so far. I wouldn't put it in my top. I think it's acceptable. It's an acceptable movie, but I probably don't need to watch it again.
I'm
It's
never
kinda
watching
where
it
I'm at.
again. I can tell you that.
Yeah, you want to get to favorites?
Yeah. My favorite was not Haru. My favorite was Baron. Because he was cool.
I did Baron as well.
And he had a little cane and he had
Like
a hat.
tea, and he got in a sword fight.
He was cool.
Again, I've talked about Professor Layton on this podcast before, but he gave me real Professor Layton vibes, which I loved those games as a child. So I appreciated that. The charismatic gentleman. You know, look at this distinguished gentleman.
Yeah. I did not have a favorite line because most of the lines, like, I just didn't like.
That's fair. I had one that I did think was funny. So it's after she's told that she's going to marry the prince. And she's like, but he's a cat. And the one cat who's talking to her was like the assistant. He was like, he's not only a cat, he's cool.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's cool. So that settles it. I guess I'm going to marry him. He's pretty cool. But that was funny. That line was funny to me. I was like, that's kind of funny. Like, he's a cool dude. So I like that. Oh, look at that cat. Look at that cat.
What did you think of the movie? Carl, you have thoughts? Okay.
Okay, no thoughts. No thoughts.
He's
That's
trying to
fine.
run away. That's how he felt.
That's okay. But they were very captivated by the film.
I think it's their favorite Ghibli film so far.
Okay. You know, that's fair.
No.
Have they seen Halloween Town yet?
No, but I'm excited to show Carl.
Or Hocus Pocus?
No, I'm excited for Carl to see Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, I think he'll really appreciate Binks. Thackeray Binks.
Zachary Binks. Favorite scene? I like the scene where she was freaking out about marrying a cat before she ended up liking the cats.
Yeah.
But she was like, how anyone would react to the thought of marrying a cat. Like, she was very realistic, and then all of a sudden she was, like, into it. But I like the scene when she wasn't into it.
Yeah, so I kind of already mentioned it, but I really liked the bodyguard cats, like, throwing, like, bouncers. They were just, like, throwing cats over the wall and, like, punching them and pushing them away. Like, get out of the way of the king.
Yeah, favorite Ghibli moment was... Oh, the maze scene. The scene with the maze. I liked when the music came in, and I just felt like the animation was cool. And that was the part where I really started to be like, oh, this is actually an entertaining movie.
Yeah. For Ghibli moment, I really liked the entrance of the Baron. Like, when they get to this little tiny town, like, the lights kind of all come to the building and, like, lights up, and then, like, he comes out, and he's like, hello, I'm the Baron.
It was kind of like Harry Potter when Dumbledore...
It was. Or, like, when Hagrid opens the passageway to, what's the place? Not Diagon Alley, Why am I can't
Isn't it
remember.
Diagon Alley?
No, Diagon Alley's the... Oh, yeah, no, it is Diagon Alley.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is our covering of that film, and we'll go to the next one.
All right, Alyssa, are you ready to move on to Howl's Moving Castle?
I am.
Yes, Howl. I didn't like that.
Did you want me to howl at the movie?
No, it was like, you
"Ow!"
know, when they used to go get 'em, tigers.
Row.
Or it's like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go get 'em,
Anyways.
tigers.
Howl's Moving Castle? Rated PG, an hour and 59 minutes. Came out in 2004 and had a 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb, a 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 4.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So this movie is written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It is loosely based on the 1986 novel of the same name by British author Diane Wynne Jones. And the film was produced by Toshio Suzuki. It was influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. And he stated he had a great deal of rage regarding that incident, and which led him to make a film which he felt would be poorly received in the U.S.
You know what?
I respect it.
That's a king move, you know? I support that.
Yeah. Okay, so this movie explores themes of old age, but tries to depict it as a positive thing and not as like a negative, like I am old and feeble. So in 2013, Miyazaki said that this movie was his favorite creation out of all of them he has done. He said that he wanted to convey the message that life is worth living, and he thinks that's still, in 2013, that was still like the case of the movie. So the film varies a lot from the novel that it is based off of. The novel focuses a lot more on challenging class and gender norms, where the film focuses on love, personal loyalty, and the destructive effects of war. So this film grossed 190, I couldn't tell if it were 90 or 40, 190 million in Japan, and 236 million worldwide, which made it one of the highest grossing films in Japan. I think it said it was behind Titanic and Spirited Away. Like, of movies
Spirited Away for a long time was the most?
Yeah.
Didn't something beat Spirited Away more recently, I think? Didn't we talk about that?
Potentially.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't remember. Anyways,
Either way, yeah.
Very highly grossed movie. Also received a lot of critical acclaim from many people, but it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature at the 78th Annual Academy Awards. It did lose.
Do you know what it lost to?
I believe it was like Peter Rabbit or something weird.
Peter Rabbit.
Wallace and Gromit. Hold on.
Oh, the Were-Rabbits or whatever? The Wallace and Gromit movie?
Here we go. Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
Okay.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Anyways, it lost.
Okay. That's upsetting.
Yeah. It was also nominated for numerous other awards that it did win. In Japan, it was nominated for some awards and is ranked very highly among a lot of critics and a lot of fans as being one of their favorite films of Ghibli. This is not like background, but I was talking at work with a couple people who have seen a lot of Ghibli films, and there was like 2 or 3 people who said that this was their favorite of all time.
Yeah.
And they've seen they haven't just seen like this one, they've seen like numerous. So yeah, it is very highly acclaimed and rated among critics and just fans in general, and consumers, I guess I should say.
Right.
Okay. A summary from Max. In search of a cure to a witch's curse, Sophie boards a wizard's magnificent moving castle into a new life of wonder and adventure.
Now, Hannah, I'm curious. Had you seen this film before now?
I had, but honestly, It's been a very long time because there was a lot I did not remember from this.
Yeah, so I watched this at a sleepover, and I want to say like 2007 or 8. Like I was in middle school at a friend's house. I had never seen it before, and I don't think I've seen it since then.
Okay.
There were some things that I remembered. I did not remember the end of the movie at all.
No.
So it was interesting to come back to it because we're pretty much getting to the point where I will not have really seen any of the films.
Yep, same.
But yeah, so it's interesting to come back to this 10, 15 years after last having seen it, and also being, a teenager, not an adult, watching it as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we did, like, Pixar stuff, we talked about how some of those movies we hadn't seen since we were, like, kids, and it's interesting to view it through a different, like, lens. I think I watched it in high school, like, over at a friend's house or something, but it's been, 10 years, maybe more, so it's definitely, there were certain scenes I remember, but most of it was, like, I couldn't remember where it went. I couldn't remember a lot of the side scenes. And honestly, when I watched it, we were probably, like, doing other stuff. I don't even know if I sat and watched the whole movie. But yeah, it was definitely interesting. Like, it was very captivating. This is another movie that's almost 2 hours, and it didn't necessarily feel that way to me. It moved. I think the pace was pretty well done, and I think it was interesting, and I think there was a lot of side characters that were enjoyable. Even, like, the villain I found to be enjoyable. Yeah, and I just thought, like most Ghibli movies, the soundtrack, amazing.
It was
animation.
Joe Hisaishi.
Yeah. He did.
Okay.
That song Merry-Go-Round that plays at the beginning is, like, one of my favorite songs. Like, I had a playlist in high school. In college, I used to have, like, a study playlist, and that song was always on there.
Yeah, I find it, so it's really interesting because I've heard the song before. I had it also on, like, a study playlist in, like, high school, college. In watching the film, I was surprised at how often it played. Like, the motif, like, that, like, main motif, or, like, leitmotif, played multiple times, like, a lot. Like, you heard it many times, and it sounded a little bit different almost every time it played. And I thought that was a really interesting way to use a theme and to use music in this film, because I don't feel like really done that in any of the other films that he's was a composer for. So I found that to be really, really interesting. So I just wanted to bring that up, that was kind of something different that I thought worked well for this film specifically.
Yeah. It's almost how, how TV shows will do that, where they'll have, like,
it's like the Full House, like the...
Right. But, like, the first one that comes to mind is, like, Grey's Anatomy had, like, the Meredith Derrick, like, music that this same kind of music would play in, like, a lot of their important scenes. And, like, so I've seen TV shows do that, where throughout seasons they'll bring back songs. And I think that makes more sense setting, because it's, like, throughout seasons of a show. But it is interesting to see in a movie, and I think it works because it helps, like, tie everything together. Like, overall, I enjoyed it. I was, like, laughing because as soon as I saw, like, her turn into, like, an old lady, I just remembered when our mom got called an old hag by a patient at work. And she was, like, in her early 50s, and my mom does not look like...
No.
She looks like she could be, like, in her 40s. Like, she doesn't look like she's that old. But yeah, and she was so upset. She came home and she said, this patient called me an old hag, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was so funny.
The exact quote was, "Listen here, you old hag."
Which I'm like, that's funny.
Which is great.
Yeah. I felt like the character interactions were really good. There was a lot of different characters that interacted, and I really liked a lot of that. And I just felt like the cast, like, in the house and in the moving castle, I felt like they had good chemistry between each other, and I just liked how the story, like, flowed.
Yeah. So that was something I was going to mention, is that I think one of the strengths of this film is that it has a relatively small cast, or at least, like, a small, like, main and supporting cast comparatively to some of these other films.
Right.
Really only have maybe, like, 5 characters who are, like, important and, like, in the film for most of it, and there's a couple side characters, but I think that really worked. Like, some movies I feel like a small cast doesn't necessarily work super well.
Right.
Princess Mononoke, I think, wouldn't work if it had, like, a really, really tiny cast. Like, it needed a lot of people and a lot of characters. But I think having a small cast and being set, like, a good portion of it set inside of one, like, small area meant that there could be better character interactions and, like, development between characters and, like, the way that they act with each other. That, I thought, worked really well.
Yeah.
Another thing that I was just thinking about is this the first Ghibli film with, like, a pretty boy, like, as the lead?
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of times they're very similar, and they're not...
I mean, they're not necessarily like manly masculine.
No, but he's definitely very like
flamboyant.
I want to say flamboyant.
Yeah, I don't want to be like not too like
not like in a derogatory sense,
in a negative sense. But he like his hair is very important.
He's very concerned about his appearance and like because his hair gets dyed a different color and he thinks his life is like over. And he says something like, "What's the point if I am not pretty anymore or not good looking or whatever?"
I was gonna ask, did you watch this in English or Japanese?
I watched this in English.
Okay, so you got that Christian Bale.
I got that Josh Hutcherson.
I know. I was gonna say the cast for the English one is pretty good.
It
got a strong cast. I watched it in Japanese this time, but the first time I watched it was in English, and that was mainly what I remembered. I was like Christian Bale's.
Yeah, I was like watching it, and I also like chores as I was watching, so I wanted something where I didn't have to like fully stare at the screen. But yeah, it was a pretty good like English voice cast. I was like kept hearing voices and I'm like, they sound so familiar, and at the end the credits I was like, oh, like okay, that's who these people are. But yeah, it was a good cast.
Yeah. I thought the designs of everything was really well done. Like I liked the color choices. I liked the kind of English, and I know they use European towns a lot for a lot of their films, but like it was kind of like Dutch, German, kind of like what's the one I'm thinking of that kind? It wasn't a Castle in the Sky kind of had the same style, because I think Kiki's Delivery Service was a bit more like coastal than that. But I did also, the other thing that I liked is that this movie starts with like a really abrupt cold open, no music, just straight into the castle in the fog. I thought that was pretty effective to be like, Howl's Moving Castle? Howl's Moving Castle, here it is. And then goes into music for a bit. And so I thought that was nice because I feel like a lot of the films start with either with music or they start with like some really dramatic, like intense scene. Right. Intensive, but I liked that it was like slow and kind of just on.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because they've done war before in Ghibli movies, so it's not a new concept, but it was interesting to see like how they chose to go about it and like show not necessarily like the effects on like a huge group of people, but sort of just like on one individual.
Yeah.
How struggles with like the effects of war. Because we saw like
Porco Rosso.
Yeah, and like a lot of them they focus more on like people as like a whole, but I think getting to see just like the effects on Howl and himself is kind of interesting. And it makes sense. I didn't really know this movie was made in response to U.S. invasion of Iraq, but it's interesting now to know that, to be like, to see how he could say like, oh, American audience might not appreciate this, especially for the time it came out, is interesting. So I think it's interesting how they chose to go about that.
Miyazaki was an original chick.
Yeah, except he didn't get canceled for...
Yeah, and death threats, you know. It's
forever.
Yeah, I do think there is, like, having seen Porco Rosso now, I can definitely see the parallels of having a lead in Howl being, like maybe the secondary lead, but having a lead, like, feel like a monster. You know how Porco Rosso, like, is a pig, sees himself as that because of the impacts of fighting in war, whereas like Howl turns into this like bird feathered monster kind of deal, like losing your humanity with the violence. So like that was a nice like parallel to see, having now seen that film. I can see like how he sees war and like specifically focusing on like the human aspect. Like you said, like one individual person's impact, as opposed to like something like Grave of the Fireflies, where it's like the impact is on, like you see it on everyone. Right.
That, because that movie is more like the impact on like that society as a whole, whereas the other two were kind of like, let's focus on this person and their direct the consequences that come to them as a direct result of war.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to portray. So I think that was well done. It's interesting though, because when I think about Grave of the Fireflies, I just think like, oh, it was based on like during time of war because it's so like prevalent. But I feel like with Howl's Moving Castle, I almost forgot about that element, because I was like more just thinking about the story, and then you're like, oh, it actually was very like entwined in this war and had a lot of impacts on the characters. So, I think it was well done.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think it's a good film. I think it is, like you said, very captivating. Like, I didn't check my phone or like need to check how much time was left because which has happened a few times where I'm like, okay, how much I got left. I will say one thing. I did feel like maybe the ending felt a little abrupt.
Yeah,
you have this scarecrow. Sophie, the lead, has pulled him out of a bush and like saved him, and he hangs out and saves them, and then all of a sudden turns into a man, and it's like, hey, I'm a prince, and true love saved me. And then it was like, hey, bud, she's got someone else she's interested in, and he's like, cool, I'll wait it out.
Yeah,
and I was like, what?
Okay.
And then it just kind of ends. I feel like we didn't need that. I feel like I would have just happier if he just stayed a scarecrow, you know?
Yeah,
like,
it was really weird.
That just, like, I felt like there was no payoff with that, specifically. So, like, that's the only part of the movie that I was like, could have just cut that part out.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. I would agree with that statement.
But otherwise, I thought it was a very well done movie. Mainly, I think the focus being on the cast themselves and the characters were really well done.
I think that's the definite, like, strength of the movie is the cast and, like, the writing. For sure. Okay. I said that my favorite scene, just like regular scene, I really liked when Sophie and the witch woman
when they're going up the stairs.
When they were going up the stairs.
That's my favorite scene,
it was
too.
So funny.
It's so funny. When I was watching this movie, I kept being like, when are their stairs coming? Because I remember when I like watching that for the first time years ago, like that's a scene that stuck with me, is them climbing
so
the
funny.
stairs.
They're like so banter back and forth, and then how at the end she's like encouraging her, and she's like, she was invited here, it's just not right that you're not helping. Like, it's just so funny.
It was so well done.
Yeah. I was like laughing. I was like, this is just like genius.
Yeah.
And then
that whole thing, especially with like Sophie, like Hal is supposed to be in disguise and she thinks this dog is Hal, so she's like carrying up the stairs and it's not even him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also my favorite scene too, was the stair climbing. It's the humor. That's like honestly maybe the best humor of a Ghibli film, to be honest. Like,
really
it was
well done.
Really well done. Very entertaining. Considering it stuck with me. Like, that being one of the scenes that I remember says a lot.
I didn't have a favorite line, did you?
There was one line at the end that I thought, when Hal gets his heart back, he's like, says something, and Sophie's like, a heart is a heavy burden. And I was like, yeah.
And you're like, it is.
It's a really, like, specific, subtle statement, but I thought it was, like, pretty much tied together, this, like, whole, how I think Miyazaki wanted this, like, specific story to be told through, like, a film media. And I was like, yeah, I like it. I support something simple, something easy. What? Favorite character. I had a pretty hard time picking a favorite character, but I ended up going with Sophie because I feel like she goes through the most change, and also, like, I guess to be this, like, person who's, like, not necessarily miserable, but, you know, she's just kind of living. She's just, you know, at a hat shop, kind of just doing that, not necessarily, like, loving it or confident. She doesn't really have a lot of self-confidence.
Right.
Meets this random guy in the street, and then an old witch is like, you're old now. Sorry. And then she's got to, like, deal with that, and she's like, yeah, I got to go find this guy and fix this shit. Something we didn't talk about, but I really, really appreciated in scenes as you could see her age, like, de-age and age again, like, that contrast, or, like, she would start to become young, and then, like, something would happen and she'd become old again. And I really liked that, like, visual aspect of that, like, aging, that process. I thought was really well done and really added to her character as well, to kind of see, like, where she was at, like, feeling with herself in comparison to how she looked. So
it was like a really seamless transition to how they did it. At some points I didn't even realize until it was like, I was like, oh, she, like, changed again.
Really subtle, but really well done, I thought.
I also picked Sophie. It was hard though. I really liked Hal's character. I really liked
Calcifer. I really liked too.
Who's the little boy?
It's like Mika or Michael. Something like that.
I really liked him. But yeah, I just really like her character, and I like how she kind of just is like, okay, I'm in this situation and I'm just gonna, like, go with it, and kind of just tries to, like, make the best of it, and she's always looking out. Like, even the witch, she, like, is taking care of her.
Yeah.
And I think she just is kind of, like, seeing the best in people.
Right.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
So Ghibli, I have kind of two. Just the opening scene, with merry-go-round playing, I really like. And then all the food moments.
God, oh my gosh, the breakfast.
Like the fried eggs.
When they were making the bacon and the eggs.
It looks so good.
That whole scene, I was like, this is what they do so well, are these, like, little small moments of just, like, living life.
Right.
Like, that, oh my God, that breakfast scene, I wrote, breakfast cooking is a vibe I'm here for, is one of the notes I wrote.
Yes.
Yes, I'm here for it.
It looks so good. It looks so good.
Yeah, I approve.
Yeah.
I'm on board. Yeah, I also kind of did a couple. I had one was that opening scene with the music coming in, the merry-go-round of life, and like the whole like kind of cold open into that. I thought was really well done. The other one that I really liked is when they move the castle and they like transform it into this new storefront and like add a bedroom and stuff, and like the magic aspect of that I thought was really well done and really interesting, and like that like sequence I thought was well done.
Yeah, I agree.
Captivating for me. All right, well, are you ready to move on to our next film?
Yes.
Our next film is Tales from Earthsea, which is rated PG-13, the second PG-13 film we've had. It was released in 2006, and it has a runtime of 1 hour and 56 minutes. This is described as an anime epic fantasy, and it's based on 4 books of the Earthsea series, which is a series of novels written by author Ursula K. Le Guin, I believe is how you pronounce her name. And it's also known as, like, the direct translation is Ged's War Chronicles, or Jed's War Chronicles. I can't remember. I think it was Ged. I think that's how it's pronounced in the movie. This is the directorial debut of Goro Miyazaki, who is Hayao Miyazaki's son.
You said directorial debut correct. We always mess it up.
You know, and I wrote down directorial debut, and I had to like deliberately like say it in my head as I was writing it down. I did do it correctly.
Congrats.
We did it. Something we both have said wrong at least once. And he also co-wrote it with, oh God, I wrote that poorly. I think it's Keiko Niwa. I think it's Keiko Niwa, who also, it was a first-time writer for the studio. So the movie also took a little bit of inspiration from one of Hayao Miyazaki's manga called Shuna's Journey. So some of the things were inspired from that. So it's not necessarily based off one specific book. It's kind of like parts taken from 4 books and combined together into one film. So, in the past, multiple directors had asked and were requested to turn this series into either, I think, TV or miniseries or movies, and the author always turned them down. Hayao Miyazaki had asked previously if he could adapt it. The author said no. But then, after the release of Spirited Away, when it won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2002, the author had watched My Neighbor Totoro, and then from there was like, okay, I would like you to adapt my books. Unfortunately, Hayao Miyazaki was working on Howl's Moving Castle. He's a busy guy. He's like, I gotta film. But Studio Ghibli not wanting to lose like access to those rights, I think people, because again, she'd been so like against people using it, so I think they were like, we got to act on it now. The Suzuki, I can't remember what his first name is. You had it written down. He produced.
Oh, from the last one.
Yeah, he's like at this point was the head of Studio Ghibli. Toshio Suzuki, yeah. So Toshio Suzuki, who's the head of Studio Ghibli at this time, one of the main producers, he was like, hey, Goro's been working hard. You know, he is, you know, good with stuff. He's a quick learner. Let's give him the film. Hayao Miyazaki was very displeased with this, as he felt he lacked the experience to be a director. And apparently they did not speak until after the film was completed. And there's also this like rumor that when he saw the film, for the first time, he walked out of it during the film. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know when we talked about, like, the background of the studio, we had talked about how they've always had a contentious relationship between father and son, especially, like, I have to give, you know, acknowledgement that I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to constantly be compared to your father, who's considered, like, the Walt Disney of Japan animation. You know, he's considered one of, like, a prolific director, and you have to follow in his footsteps. Like, I think there's no feasible way anyone could do that, regardless of whether you're his son. So I feel like, just in a general front, he probably gets, like, a lot harder criticism than anyone else would.
Right. Yeah, which it does happen, unfortunately, but yeah.
Yeah, so I just like to state that first. Like, that, I'm sure, is a terrible thing to have to experience in general. But the music was done by Tamina Terashima, who had not done a soundtrack or composed for the studio prior, and did not after this point either. This is the only film that they had done. The film itself received generally positive but mixed reviews. The author also was mixed on her views. She wasn't necessarily thrilled with the way it turned out. She also expressed that she was bummed out that Hayao Miyazaki didn't do it, I guess, is maybe the way that she'd phrase that. Like, she was like, the movies don't really represent the book, like, the books. They're kind of their own individual thing they draw inspiration from, but it's not necessarily like a one-to-one. So the movie was was number 1 for 5 weeks in Japan when it came out. It has made 7.84 billion yen worldwide, which is equal to about $75.5 million in the US. The Mouse released the dub of this film in 2010 because there were some licensing disputes. They had initially, I think some Disney property had rights to do, like, a mini-series on the books or something like that, so there was some licensing disputes, so that's why it took an extra, like, 4 years to come out, and not right away like they had been doing with a lot of their other films. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, just because I'm looking at my notes, is that the author also criticized the film in the sense that she thought it focused too much on the aspects of war and violence, which necessarily weren't main themes of the book, that she thought it was too much focus on those aspects.
Okay.
But the film has a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, 47 out of 100 on Metacritic, 2.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. But IMDb, it's got a 6.3 out of 10. So, the summary from Max. As crops dwindle and dragons reappear, a wizard and a young prince search for the force behind the imbalance that threatens to destroy the land.
You know what? I don't necessarily agree with the Rotten Tomato score. I
don't either.
Didn't find it, like, to be bad. I found it a bit confusing at times.
Yeah.
A bit hard to follow at times, but I didn't think it was necessarily, like, a bad movie.
There's so much to discuss with this, I think.
Yeah.
So I also agree. I don't think this is a bad film. This movie has a worse Letterboxd score than Ice Age 2.
See, like, that's not...
It has similar ratings to, like, some of the Ice Age films. And I was going to say, my comparison was going to be, because we have watched all Ice Age films, those are bad. Like, those are bad films. I don't think this is a bad film. Is it boring? Yes, it is boring. It went on for way too long. And there's definitely some plot issues.
But I don't find it to be bad.
But it's not bad.
I wonder if... Because, like, with movies in, like... Studio Ghibli or, like, Pixar, they have such a high bar. And, like, so if the movie doesn't reach that level, people tend to rate it worse. Like, in Ice Age, like, let's be honest, none of the Ice Age movies were that great to begin with.
One is decently good
it's
comedy.
Decent, but it's not,
Not for animation, under no circumstances.
But it's, like, so there's a lower bar almost. So I wonder if people see a Ghibli film and it's not Spirited Away, it's not, it's not these super films, they tend to rate it harder. I wonder if that's part of it, because compared to, like, some movies I've seen, like, I was like, okay, this is enjoyable. I agree, it's kind of boring in the middle. It does go on too long. It's almost 2 hours?
It's almost 2 hours, hour 56,
And it's just, there were some parts, like I said, that I got kind of confused on. There were some parts that I was just like, okay, like, why.
Yeah.
But I don't find it to be bad. I felt like if we're going to talk about positives, I felt like...
Ooh, animation.
Animation was really well done.
Yeah.
I kind of was... It was a little bit... I noticed it was different from a lot of the Ghibli films, and in a way it was kind of like refreshing because it's like, oh, we get something a little bit different. It was kind of giving me like Game of Thrones vibes a little bit.
So one thing that I kind of was writing about was that this is kind of the first one that I would say is like specifically medieval.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Studio Ghibli has done like a medieval set, like type themed film before.
Yeah.
Which medieval themes certainly like done to death. Like we've had like that's a genre that's covered a lot. But this studio I don't think had done like anything with that specific like time period type feel to it.
Yeah, so I thought, like, you know, that was good. I actually thought, like, the final sequence kind of felt appropriately drawn out. I didn't feel, like, way too long, and the ending didn't necessarily feel too rushed. I was a little bit confused because he was like, oh, I have to go back and pay for my crimes, and then they were doing, like, this weird montage, and I was like, is he not going back? And then he left at the end. I also thought it was weird that they never showed the king, queen, like, that area ever again.
Yeah. I want to get into some of my thoughts about some of the plot stuff. Hannah, this movie specifically feels very much like the Black Cauldron of Studio Ghibli. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Black Cauldron is a film by the mouse. Came out in the 80s. Hannah and I had it on VHS, so we watched it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And this film also suffers, like, it's not rated very highly. People don't really like this film. It went through production hell. It was, like, in production for, like, 15 years. It also is adapted from a series of novels in the same way. Like, they just kind of picked things from different novels and kind of put them together into one movie. And I think it suffers a similar thing where it's, like, Black Cauldron is super stylized, like, animation-wise. It's really got, like, a dark undertone. But the actual story and plot suffer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's specifically, at least in Tales for Earthsea, I don't know if it's specifically because they basically took things from 4 different novels. They didn't like pick one story and kind of stick with that. Because it felt like sometimes things skipped around and they didn't explain things very well. Aaron is the main character, right? He's this young kid. And the opening of this movie is him murdering his father.
Right.
And then they just kind of cut away from that. And they never talk about it until about, like, halfway through the film. He mentions it. And he's like, I don't know why I did that. We also don't really know the consequences of that. Nobody really talks about that in the scope of this movie. You know, at the end he mentions he's got to go back to answer for his crimes. But I'm also like, does anyone know that he did that? Like, does anyone know that he killed his father?
I think for his conscience, he had to go tell that because no one knew because he did it. There was no one around.
Right.
Maybe they guessed because he had I don't know. But something you said, you know how they went off 4 books, and it immediately reminded me, this is like a weird example, when Sister of the Traveling Pants 2 combined 3 books.
I was just going to mention that, yeah.
And it kind of got really jarring and jumpy, and I think that happens when you don't focus on like one, you know, if you focus on one book, it's a lot easier. You have to cut stuff, obviously, but you have like a solid story where you start to get issues is where you go through too many things and you try to shove it all into one.
Yes. I think that was a real issue.
I know. I thought for a second that Sparrowhawk was the king, and I was like, is he alive? I was so confused because it was so jumpy, so jarring. And characters just kept showing up, and I was like, this is, so there was definitely plot issues. For sure.
Think, especially with comparison to how, like, going from Howl's Moving Castle to this, I think the biggest flaw is the cast.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, when you draw from an existing source material in terms of, like, the world building and the style, like, you don't really have to do that because it's kind of already there. And I thought the animation was a bit, did I use the word gritty? Like, going from House to this, like, it was a bit more watercolor, a bit more gritty. I thought it fit, like, that type of feel, this, like, kind of desperation, wartime, end of the world type thing. But then, like, we get all these characters, and I don't know anything about them. I don't know what their motives are. Like, Sparrowhawk, we don't ever see him do any... He's supposed to be, like, an archmage, which is, like, a magician kind of situation. But
Yep.
I feel like we didn't see him do anything except transform his face, you know?
Yeah,
one
he
time.
didn't do much.
We didn't, like, actually see him do a lot. This girl...
Tachi.
There
There were 2 T names, and they were very similar.
Yeah, they were very similar. And then she had a real name and, like, her given name.
And she was a dragon?
And she was a dragon. I was... Okay, that's the other thing I didn't really understand was this... The dragons appearing is a big deal. And then we never get an explanation of what that means.
Right.
And then the dragon shows back up at the end. And then I was very confused.
But there was like 6 dragons flying overhead, and I was like...
Yeah, so it was confusing.
I looked away for like 5 seconds, and then she was a dragon, and I was like,
too.
did I miss something?
Like, well, because there's a part, right, where they're at the top of the castle.
Right.
And, like, he jumps, and there's, like, that, like, transition water scene, which was really cool. I did like that scene. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wait, why is there a dragon? I was
like, I swear I looked away for 2 seconds. I don't know what's happening.
The same thing happened, where I was like,
yes, I went back, and I was like, no, that really just happened that quickly.
I think that they set up all these plot points, because, you know, you get things like slavery.
Yeah.
That never really go anywhere.
No.
You get these comical henchmen that are, like, way more involved in the story than the Cobb, Corn on the Cob is.
Yeah, Cobb.
Did you watch the English version or the Japanese of
English.
This? Because William Dafoe just whispering at me was, like, an ASMR that I did not... Like, I'm not a big fan of ASMR. I think we've talked about this before, but he just whispered every line.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm coming to get you. It's not poison. It's not poison. But a Green Goblin, like, imagine the Green Goblin, like, doing ASMR.
Yeah. I thought Cobb was the queen for a second. I was so confused. I was like, what is happening? It was very good.
But were you disturbed when Cobb's eyes disappeared and turned into black holes?
Black.
I was like, why? Why did they hate me?
They never explained, why she turned into a dragon. They never explained, like...
Because there's a point where Sparrowhawk, like, looks at her and was like, could she be...
Right.
And I'm assuming he means a dragon?
But that was...
But they never explained that.
Yeah, they had a lot... Yeah, they didn't explain a lot. Which was very confusing.
Yeah, and I think that hurt the story because I didn't really care about any of the characters. You know, Aaron, I mean, there was a period where he just did nothing. Like, there was a part of the film where nothing happened for about 30, 40 minutes before the end of the film.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I was just like, okay, he couldn't unsheath his sword, but then magically he could. The power of, I don't know, lack of fear. Like King Arthur situation, I was really confused about that whole situation.
It was like the power of wanting to live.
Yeah. And it felt like they were really throwing that theme at the end. Like, it was just a lot of talking about, like, life is important.
Right.
Keep on living. Don't let your fear control you. And it just kept going. And I just was like, this is rough.
Yeah, it just, it was messy.
Yeah, it was messy.
But I wouldn't say it's like a 30% Rotten Tomatoes.
No, it's messy, but you can see the potential.
Yeah.
I think it's like the potential for this to be a good movie was a good movie was there. Like, it had the bare bones, like the story we could have gotten there.
Right.
I think there just was, and I don't mean to disrespect Goro, but I think he really did not have the experience to be directing this type of a film.
Right, like, I wonder how it would have been if Hayao would have done the film.
Right, because if you're adapting multiple novels and writing that, and having to write a story based on multiple novels, that's a lot of work.
It's hard.
Especially for someone who's never directed a film before.
Right.
Like, that is, like, not...
I feel like it's hard even for people who are, like... directing.
I feel like he got put into that position because the producer was like, hey, you do this.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna say, no? Like,
right.
You know? Yeah, I feel like there was some issues in... There's a word I'm looking for, and I don't remember what it is, but I just feel like it could have been better. Some frayed edges that weren't, like, connected together.
Right.
You know, the glue is not set...
Yeah. It's like the video of where the man puts the piece of tape over, like, the leaking boat.
Oh, what's that called?
Can't think what it
flex
is. Flex
tape or something?
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just, yeah.
It could have been better. I feel like this gets, at least looking online, looking at people's review of this, I feel like this gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And doesn't necessarily, like, it's not a Cars 2. We're not talking about Cars 2 here. We're talking about maybe, like, a Bug's Life.
Yeah.
Or
like,
Monsters University, maybe.
Yeah.
Or some, like, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, like, I don't think I need to watch this again, but it's not, like, bad. Like, I'm not watching this and being like, this sucks. It's just like, I can see where there are some issues and,
it's
like, pacing and plot.
Onward?
Yeah.
Where, like, I felt like there was potential, there was some confusing parts, but it was, like, it wasn't bad, but I probably wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah, but, that's rough. It's rough to have a real shit,
Yeah.
That one that people are like, this sucks.
Yeah. All right. Favorite character? I didn't really know. I just put Sparrowhawk.
I did as well, because I just felt like he had the most interesting stuff going on.
And he cared.
Yeah. It was important. I liked that scene where Aaron's trying to stab him, and he just kind of, like, grabs him and, like, embraces him. Yeah. And is like, it's all good. Let it do it. Let your egg take over Anakin. Sorry, that was my Palpatine impression.
Like that. Okay, favorite scene. I liked the, like, final sequence scene where they were, like, running all over the castle and, like,
I did too.
It was cool. I think it was well done, and until it got kind of confusing with the dragon part, but I think it was, like, cool.
Yeah, I agree.
The chase part.
Yeah,
was
the
cool.
chase scene, the climbing up the tower. Yeah, I liked that as well. I thought that was well done.
Yeah, I didn't pick a favorite line.
There was this part where he's, like, embracing him. Sparrowhawk is embracing Aaron. They're talking about, life, because he's like, life's not worth living, or, like, I'm fearful of life. And he was like, life is a wave on the sea.
He had a line, too, that was like...
I liked it.
Something about darkness and light. It reminded me of Harry Potter, where it was like...
Or, like, Iroh. Yeah. Uncle Iroh wisdom. I felt
some old man wisdom.
Yeah, I felt that, like, enriching, like, comfort character in him. But yeah, life is a wave on the sea. And I was like, nice. Ebbs and flows.
It is just much a wave in the sea. Okay, my favorite Ghibli moment was the scene where they first arrived to that town. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of it, but the music started playing and it was showing, like, the whole landscape, and I just thought the animation and music together was really cool.
Yeah. So I picked, in the end of that confusing scene where he, like, jumps off the tower and you, like, it's like a first-person shot where he, like, goes towards the water and then, like, ramps up on the dragon, and then you've got the dragon there, and I thought that animation, like, kind of sequence was really, like, well done, and I liked it. And I was like, ooh, I like this.
Cool.
This is a change of pace, so
yes.
I liked that one. You ready to move on to our next film?
Yes. Next film is Ponyo.
Ponyo. Rated
G. It came out in 2008 in a runtime of an hour and 43 minutes. It had a 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So this movie was written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. The box office was $204 million, and it became the 8th highest grossing anime film of all time. So the English version was released in 2009 to 927 theaters across the US, which was by far the widest opening for a Ghibli film in the United States.
Do you remember seeing trailers for this film? Because I do. I remember seeing... We didn't see it in theaters, but I definitely remember the trailers for this film.
So 927 theaters. For context, Spirited Away only released in 26 theaters, and Howl's Moving Castle released in 36 theaters. So very different. Okay, so the producer was Toshio Suzuki, and he suggested that this film specifically be aimed at children. They wanted to make a film similar to that, and that was part of the reason why they ended up releasing it so much, was because the mouse took over the US version, and a lot of the Pixar people ended up working on the U.S. version. I believe Peter...
Pete Docter.
Pete Docter and a couple of other main people were the ones who did work on this. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when they were making this film, Miyazaki recalls that, like, as a 9-year-old, he borrowed a copy of The Little Mermaid, the novel. Uh-huh. And then while he was reading it, he had difficulty... While reading it, he had difficulty accepting its premise and that the protagonist didn't have a soul. So he was trying to, in this movie, he was kind of trying to change that narrative that he read in the book. Because I did, at one point, I was like, this is kind of giving Little Mermaid vibes.
Oh, yeah, I wrote that down. I wrote that note, yeah.
Okay, so Miyazaki actually wanted his next film, which would be, like, the one after this, to be a sequel to this movie.
Oh, okay.
But Suzuki? Oh, my God. Toshio Suzuki convinced him to make The Wind Rises instead of a sequel. There was barely any background in this movie. It was hard to find.
Interesting.
Which is weird, because it was such a big...
Did really well, yeah.
I know. Okay, so this won 5 awards at the 8th Annual Tokyo Anime Awards. And a big part of this movie, they wanted to focus on doing a lot of hand drawings. I read somewhere that they closed off a lot of the computer studios to encourage people not to go do animation on the computers. They wanted as much hand-drawn as they could. And they brought in, like, when they did this movie, they brought in, like, a newer style of drawing that one of the people working on the film had done, like, in a previous film.
Okay.
So they really wanted to focus on that aspect as opposed to, like, the computer elements.
I was gonna say, I thought I noticed while watching it that it felt more like Princess Mononoke or earlier, like 90s, like that type of style. Like it felt more like less computer hand drawn and more hand drawn. So that's interesting to note that it actually was. Yeah,
they had like a big emphasis on that. As much hand drawing as they could was kind of their goal. Okay. A little I should say all these stuff, most of this stuff is from Wikipedia, our most
trusted source.
Yeah.
Yes.
A little summary from Max. A magical goldfish named Ponyo yearns to become human to be with Sasuke. Sasuke?
I think it's Sasuke.
I wrote it wrong.
I was gonna say, I just watched this a little bit ago. I was like, I'm pretty sure his name's Sasuke.
Yeah, I wrote it wrong.
Okay.
To be with Sasuke. But their friendship leads to unintended consequences on both land and sea.
Why was this trip?
Why was this Finding Nemo?
This was, Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
The Little Mermaid.
Yep.
Lilo and Stitch.
Yes.
And...
It was Lilo and Stitch.
And led to Luca.
Yeah.
I got such strong Lilo and Stitch vibes. Like a gender swap Lilo and Stitch kind of deal. Although I don't think Stitch is an alien, so he is not really gendered in general. But the main, like, the little child being, like...
Yeah, Lilo. I got Finding Nemo with, like, the overprotective father, like...
Yeah. Nani gave me, Sasuke's mom gave me Nani vibes.
Okay, so did you listen in English?
I did not. I know it's Tina Fey plays the mom.
Because it's a stacked cast in English.
I looked. Tina Fey
Betty
is the
White?
mom. Yeah, Betty White's in it. Matt Damon.
Uh-huh. Oh, Noah Cyrus and Frankie Jonas.
Yeah. Yes, they played the two.
They sang, and they sang.
Yeah, and they sang, yeah.
And I was worried when I saw the cast that it was going to be one of those Finding Nemo 2 where the cast takes me out of the movie sort of thing, which I didn't really find that to be the case, because Tina Fey's done other voice acting and stuff. So that wasn't really an issue, but yeah, it was a stacked cast. I was like, a lot of people.
So there were on the Disney Channel so many trailers about them being the leads. Like, again, because their siblings are all Disney Channel people.
Right.
I remember, like, there was, like, what is it, Disney 365 or whatever, or the 411 or whatever. I remember seeing a bunch of trailers of that. But anyway, when I went in, I was like, I'll watch it in Japanese. I'm pretty sure I watched this.
Okay.
But, like, I guess, like, at least 10 years ago.
I don't think I had seen it.
Because I did not remember a lot of this movie, having watched it now. Sorry, my nose got weird. 1 minute.
That's fine. Gotta stop snorting that cocaine. Catch up to you. Oh, she's doing more. If you're not watching on video.
Snorting up my cocaine stash. I'm in love with the cocoa.
Oh my god.
I don't condone drug use.
No.
Specifically cocaine. It's terrible for your heart. You really shouldn't. If you're gonna pick any drug to do, cocaine's not the answer. Don't do cocaine. There's better choices.
Yes.
Use drugs responsibly.
This message was brought to you by Research Drink Repeat. 2023. Use drugs responsibly.
Yes. Yeah, the one thing, the first one I got was Lilo and Stitch. That was my first, I got such strong vibes with that. And then the second one I got was Little Mermaid. When she got her, hands and feet situation, I was like, oh, we're getting fish out of water. We're getting that kind of story. I don't really know the right words to describe this film. This little child loves ham. She loves ham. She's obsessed with ham, which I'm like, I can't relate because I don't really
can't either. I don't like ham.
I don't really like ham, but I love the enthusiasm she has for ham. She's like, I want to eat ham. Her dad's like, eat up. And she's like, nah.
I want ham.
I want ham.
I mean, once in a while, a nice honey-baked ham, it's nice, but I don't really, ham lunch meat is gross to me. I don't really like ham much.
Yeah, occasional ham here or there.
Yeah.
Once a year ham. Ham bone soup. I can get behind a ham bone soup.
Yeah.
This movie's wild. It's wild. I don't know what Miyazaki was on when he was making this, because if you look at I think the closest film in the studio that I could compare this to is My Neighbor Totoro.
Yeah.
Just due to the age of the characters, it being relatively light. It's rated G. It doesn't have any super strong intense themes. I mean, the world's ending, Majora Mask style, where the moon's coming down to destroy the earth, but that's not really important because they're in love and they're 5.
Yeah.
So the weight of the world rests on 5-year-olds' love for each other, which I got was so ridiculous. It's what do you mean? So we're putting the fate of the world on a 5-year-old and a fish. And if they're not in love, well, she turns into sea foam like Ariel, and the world ends. So that plot point was wild to me. Mm-hmm. But it worked, though. It was cute.
Yeah, it was I could tell it's made for kids. It's endearing, and I thought it was funny that the mom was Tokyo drifting, a horrible driver, and then she cracked open a beer.
She learned from Dominic Toretto.
Yeah, and then she cracked open a cold one when the husband said he wasn't coming home. I'm like, this mom is me. She's laying on the bed, sad.
Yeah, their mom was great. She was she was a whole mood. I was here for that. I like when she was like, "Lady, this bridge is out," and she's like, "Not for me.
It's not for family.
It's fine. It's Fast and the Furious time. Not for family
on your side.
When family's on the line." You gotta save the Vatican, She learned from the best.
Yeah, I mean, it was very odd, but it did work. I found myself, smiling. I was like, this is cute. And it's so weird, but it works kind of way.
I really liked, there's the scene where she is going back to the humans, and she gets these hands and feet, and her, sisters all become giant fish and basically create a tsunami that's going to destroy the world, essentially.
Right.
But it was so entertaining. And I was like, this is wild. I love it. And as, weird as it was, it worked. I think it worked in, in the way the movie went. I feel like it worked. It was entertaining. I wasn't annoyed by the children, which... I thought they were
usually
written
happens.
well.
Yeah.
I liked the mom. I thought the mom was great.
Yeah.
Ponyo's parents were also very intriguing as well. The style was good. Thought the characters were fun. It's just it's solid. It's a solid, cute film.
It's also interesting that there's not really a villain. I mean, I guess you could say the dad was at the beginning, but then
but he's just
looking out for his kid who's 5 years old.
King Triton,
Yeah.
He's just wants what's best for Ariel.
It's interesting. There's no real villain, and it's more just about these 2 kids and
and their relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of sweet. And the whole world ending thing, we're living that right now, so it's kind of, whatever. I kind of was like, yeah,
feel like the weight did not feel heavy.
No.
And I think that probably is directed because it's directed towards children.
Right, because a lot of these movies, even the cute, endearing ones, sometimes have these really heavy heavy elements.
Like My Neighbor Totoro, with the sister potentially drowning and their mom being sick in the hospital.
Right.
Like, even though it's a cute, there's like a fluffy, Totoro is this massive fluffy little spirit guy, flying around with a cat bus. You've also got like sick family members and potentially drowned siblings. Like, it still feels like the weight is there still.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that they made a film specifically for children. Like, the directive was like to create like a film for a younger audience and use a younger audience cast to do that.
Right.
Because I thought that was nice. Because I don't think we had gotten like a young cast for quite a while.
No,
like Chihiro's like 12, but that's still relatively older than.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while, especially with like the focus just being on the kids, because like the mom's in it, but she's not like the main character. And there's other side characters, but the main focus is just like these two relationships, and that's something Ghibli's always done pretty well, I think, is just like these endearing like kids just being kids and like and stuff like that. So I think they do that pretty well. Yeah, solid. I think it's a solid film. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but like it's solid. It's entertaining. It was nice after the last movie because it just felt like a palate cleanser.
It did feel like a nice palate cleanser.
I was like, oh, this is nice. Yeah. It wasn't confusing.
No, it was not confusing.
Which is nice.
It was pretty straightforward, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do favorite character.
Oh, it's Lisa. Who's Sasuke's mom? Sorry.
I was like, what?
Because he calls her Lisa. He doesn't call her mom. He's like Lisa. Because I thought I missed a plot point where like maybe he was like adopted or something, or it was like a sibling or other family member that was not his mom. But then it was okay, he just calls his parents by their first name. But yeah, Lisa was my favorite. Oh my god.
Yeah, she was
Sasuke's mom. She's Tokyo drifting. She's like, I ain't here for this shit. Like, I'm not dealing with this. Supportive, like caring parent.
She works at a nursing facility.
Yeah, like she gets pissed when her husband's like, hey, I'm on the boat, I can't come home. Oh, and she's just like, fuck you. Like, I like how in Morse code, she's just like, jerk, like, you suck.
Yeah. I agree. She was my favorite too. She also was like my favorite scene just in general was when she was just like laying on the couch or the bed. And, like, it was just so, like, everyone knows that feeling of just being so, like, I can't, like, I'm done. Yeah. But then, like, afterwards, she realizes, like, he's upset, so she's, like, trying to make him feel happy and stuff. And, yeah, so she is nice. She was my favorite character and scene.
Solid. We love a supportive parent.
We do.
The
dad from
Luca.
The butcher dude from Luca.
Yeah, Massimo. We love Massimo. Great supportive father. Especially if you said Pete Docter, because I think he did Luca.
Yeah,
or was involved with Luca. So if Pixar did a lot of work on like the localizing of this film for English, I feel like I can see that influence into Luca. Yeah. Like I can kind of see that parallel.
Yeah. I would agree.
Or drawing inspiration from that, And like, of course, like Little Mermaid and stuff. But yeah. So my favorite line, just because I feel like this is the movie, is I want ham.
Yeah.
I want ham.
I can't relate, but like, yeah.
I support Ponyo on Ponyo's journey to get ham,
Yeah. I like this, the line, I don't remember exactly what it was, but when she was trying to give the baby, the drink, and the mom's like, no. Yeah, and the mom's like, oh, I'm sorry, the baby can only drink milk. Yeah. I was like, yeah. Yeah. Like that, just the comedic delivery of that line was funny.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I think the best scene was the fish tsunami scene. I really liked it. I liked the way that it went. Like, basically, like, everyone else sees it as waves, but like when you periodically it'll show the fish like jumping in and out of the water, and like Ponyo running on those waves, full speed ahead. Ridiculously, but I really liked the way that was done, so I thought that was a fun scene.
Yeah, my favorite scene was the mom like laying on the bed, and then the part after, which actually my Ghibli moment was the middle part with him and like them doing the
SOS the Morse code.
Yeah, and it was cool because like at the beginning there was like this music playing, and it just felt like very like heartfelt, but then they mixed in this comedy with the mom just like being pissed. So that, I guess that whole sequence, I just really enjoyed all of that. But also Ghibli, just like the animation in general, because it was nice, like always.
I really liked once, like, everything it kind of flooded when they're having these kind of, like, slow, deliberate, like, underwater shots where you can see just everything is underwater, and they do that, like, there's, like, nice music playing, and it's pretty, like, serene and, like, kind of just focused on the environment. And I thought that was really well done, and I was enjoying the underwater shots, and they're just kind of going along in the boat, you know, hanging out.
Yeah. All right, so that is
it for this grouping, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have probably one more chunk of movies to go. I think we got 6 left. Feels good to be near in the end.
Yeah.
We're almost there. It doesn't feel good to have to do this ranking, though.
No.
Does not feel good.
The only nice thing about doing Pixar as quickly as we did is it made it easier to rank. This is going to be harder because we're so broken up.
Yeah.
But regardless, we will be back with potentially a final review episode. They'll still be ranking.
Yes.
In the meantime, though, you can email us, r3podcast@gmail.com. We have Instagram. We have Letterboxd.
Do.
And, thanks for listening.
Yeah. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
We would like to thank Joseph McDade for our intro music. He provides free music available for all kinds of creative use. The song that we used is called Sunrise Expedition, and you can find it and his other music on his website, josephmcdade.com. If you would like to reach us, you can email us at r3podcasts@gmail.com. That's R, the number 3, podcasts@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Instagram by searching Research Rank Repeat.
Wow. Mr. Malfoy.
Yeah.
In case you cut and you need
There's
to
one thing we know how to do. It's how to pack.
Oh,
last minute.
I'm good at packing efficiently last minute. And I mean, I just will bring my Vera Bradley duffel.
The Vera Bradley
so
duffel.
I just need to make sure I have like two. Sorry. I gotta mute.
Whoever edits this first has a lot of coughing and sneezing to cut out. I'm just gonna let you know.
I was trying to mute it and I kept not being able to see the mute button.